about a 15-20 second wait before we go live, before we start.
Just for the fun things like ads and whatnot.
Yeah, so for those of you who are catching us in the replay, this is just the first few minutes of the show that we wait for ads to play for those who are getting ads. And I guess at this point, we can say welcome to the CARRGUY and SIXFAN Show for episode number 17 of season 4. We are 1 week away from ending the CARRGUY and SIXFAN Show for season 4. But before we do that, we've got another guest on the show. And before we introduce him, my name is Jason, and right beside me over here is my co-host from Straight Six Fan.
And I'm Grant Tommy. Yes, I am the face behind the channel Straight Six Fan, or Six Fan of this operation. So welcome everybody to yet another Thursday night. And I know we're still waiting for a couple people to jump in, but wanted to say welcome to Haggard Hot Rods, GMC Texas as well. But it's my pleasure to introduce a guy I've known for quite some time. And it's weird for me because he is my coworker, but we are separated by a state now. So with that, I want to bring on Greg Porter of Greg's Garage. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Grant. Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. This is going to be a little bit of a different situation for me, just because obviously I don't necessarily have any personal connection to Greg, but nevertheless, Greg is somebody that I learned a little bit about when I was working on my old square body here. He taught me how to weld, and he didn't even know it. So thanks, Greg, for that. I know that I've already sent you a message on that once upon a time, but I'm going to hand it over to Grant, and we'll kind of lead into the show here a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great place to start. So I know, Greg, when I came to the company we both work at, one of the first things we started talking about, I was podcasting at the time. You were doing this little thing called YouTube, and we kind of started exchanging, hey, how do you make money off of this? And we were bouncing ideas back and forth. And I remember you talking about that same video Jason was talking about. The how to weld sheet metal was kind of your first, if you want to say, video that blew up or whatnot. So you've been on the YouTube platform for a lot longer than he or I have been on. And so take us through a little bit of, let's go back to the roots of Greg's Garage, how it all started, and talk a little bit about that how to weld sheet metal video.
Yeah, sure. I mean, kind of taking you all the way back, right? Like I was one of the first channels on YouTube, I suppose is the way I'd say it. I think my account started in December of 2006. So rewind your clock back 14 years. And I've been putting out videos since then. And it really started with Pete at Southwest Rod and Customs. If anybody's ever watched his bodyworking videos or SWRNC, I think his other channel is DIY Auto School. And I hopped on because I was restoring my Karmann Ghia, which I'm pointing at because it's behind the camera up on a lift. I was restoring my Karmann Ghia, and I knew how to weld and I knew how to do a bunch of other stuff. But there's sort of this black hole that you get into when you start working on a really old car, and there's not many of them out there. So you don't, when it's so rotted that you don't even know how it goes back together. And that's where I was. The bottom 6 inches of that car was rotted off. So it's like, how, I don't even know where to start. Like I've got rocker panels, but there's nothing to weld them to because it's all gone. So what was supposed to go there? And Pete had a series of videos, which if you go back and look at them, some of them are hysterical because he had some helpers and oh my gosh, he coined some great terms with those two guys, the clown show. But he was going through the restoration of a Karmann Ghia and he had it on a rotisserie. So he was showing the bottom side of it and how to weld on it and what needs to go where and how those things rot out. And I was like, this is gold. You know, I've been trying to restore this car. At that point, it had been for maybe like 8 or 9 years, just like stuck, completely stuck, staring at this hunk of metal going, well, what do I do next? I guess maybe I can work on the hood because the hood's there, right? And so anyway, as I saw Pete go through his videos, I thought, well, this could be a two-way street. I'm going to start making videos on me restoring my car, knowing nothing about how to do it. And my hope is that somebody who knows what they're doing will see this and start giving me advice on what I'm doing wrong or where I should go next. And it worked. Pete became, we're good friends. We talk on the phone every once in a while. We definitely, chat back and forth in YouTube comments and that sort of thing. But he became a great friend and a wonderful resource. And he did for a bunch of other people. And so I started making videos of the things I knew how to do as well. And so one of those videos is that how to butt weld sheet metal. And the reason I made it is because it took me 6 years, 7 years, something like that, to figure out how to weld thin sheet metal that was on a kind of rusty car. So it's not this perfect out of the cellophane butt weld sheet metal. You know, it's not cut on a shear. It's cut with a dodgy tool, and it's maybe a little rusty and this and that. So I made a video. Here's how you do it, because I had another friend, the Rick Fix, who was restoring a Nova, and if you've watched his videos, he cut apart a 2-door and a 4-door, and it's a great series. He's up there in Nova Scotia in Canada, and he was having trouble butt welding sheet metal. So I thought, this is something I know how to do. I've got all the terrible experience behind me. Now I can show you, you know, it's not just about aiming in the right spot. It's about the angle of the tip of the welding torch. It's about how far you are away. It's about how long you squeeze the trigger. It's all of these techniques that when you watch a normal welding video, you don't ever pick those up. So that was sort of my impetus in why I got into YouTube. And Grant, I know you know the YouTube Garage Gang was something that we started, and it was literally a group of guys. There were some of them, James Freddy's is one of them, who is an incredible hot rod builder. You know, these guys are working on $500,000 hot rods, entrusted with these incredible vehicles, and they were making videos just like we were, feeding back, and it was almost like an answer or a call and an answer. You'd put up a video and go, man, I'm really stuck on how to sand this weird spot. I keep getting lumps in the bodywork. And they would make a video back because, you know, they were working on a car that had a similar thing, and say, well, here's the 6 different blocks I might use to do these different types of curves. And it just became a really great group of guys that exchanged information about bodyworking and hot rods.
Well, for those of you guys who are joining us after the show and listening to us on SoundCloud, welcome to CarrGuy and SIXFAN Show, and we've got our host, Greg Porter, from Greg's Garage. Greg, I want to kind of go back to one of the things that you said in your little spiel there about being a great resource. And one of the things that I had done when I was starting to do some rocker panel work on this old square body was I had the mentality that you know, all the cool dudes on Chip Foose and all those type of restoration shows, they just kind of snap down the welding gear, they pull the trigger, and boom, there's a great big fender on a car somewhere, right? So that's what I was doing. I mean, I got the flip down pretty good. I thought that was pretty cool, but when it come to the welding, I was blowing through the metal. Every time I found rust, I was finding more. It just kept creeping up and up and up. But by the time I found good metal and finally had something to weld to, I couldn't make it happen. And Grant suggested that I check out that video. He was aware of it, and he said, go over and check out Greg's video on that. And I did, and just learning how to adjust the speed of the wire, the thickness of the metal on the welder, and the quick little bursts of just kind of tacking it together and just bringing it back home, made it so that I could finish this job by myself without having to ask somebody else to come in and do it for me. I hate doing jobs that I know I can do, or I hate paying for jobs I know I can do myself. And I think that's why one of the biggest things that got me, you know, onto this project here. So thank you. I know I've already said it before, but thanks for that video, because it certainly helped me. When did you first realize that this video, you said you had the great idea to make it, but when did you realize that particular video was a hit?
Well, so okay, I'll back up into what you said first. You said this great idea to make the video. There was no higher calling for this video. It was literally, I had a friend, you know, the Rick Fix, who was having a situation where he couldn't get his panel welded onto his car, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make a video for Rick. It's just going to be for Rick. And I think I filmed that one on a cell phone. I can't remember, but it was like after work, and I was like, I need to shoot this right now. And I just grabbed 2 of the grossest pieces of sheet metal that I could find and just jammed them together and said, yeah, let's do this. And I think even in the video, I say, hey, Rick, this is how you do it, and start welding away. And it's like a 3 or 4 minute video. It's not very long, and it's not in depth. It wasn't set up. And I thought, well, you know, that's going to help Rick, and we're done. cut. And I don't know, it sat out there for several months, just the few subscribers that I had at the time watched it and people commented and this and that. And then all of a sudden, it caught somewhere in the algorithm. Some magical algorithm monkey deemed it necessary to spread that video a little bit. And it got traction because it answered the question. It showed all the things that I had never seen in any other welding video. Again, there's a ton of videos where they say, hey, here, take these two perfect pieces of sheet metal and butt them up together and just run yourself a little seam, and it looks so darn easy.
Yeah, with their 17 years of experience.
Yeah, and even at that, I could take a beginner and give them two perfectly cut coupons, and they could stitch them together, and it wouldn't be a problem. But you take rusty old sheet metal that's not cut straight and a patch panel that might have been made out of questionable material, and you jam those two together, and unless you really know what you're doing, there's no way to get them to stick.
So you talk about that video. There's also your journey of restoring the Gia, and so you say you started in 2006. I always joke that like with YouTube, it feels like I call it the graduating class of fill in the blank, right? Like you kind of feel like you come up through the ranks with some fellow YouTubers. Like, Jason and I found each other at a similar point in time. Now he's sort of outpacing me about 3-1 now, but it's the friendships and the community you make. But as you grew and grew, I know at some point in time you said, hey, how can I level up my game? And of course, we all know video creators or Tim Schmoyer here on YouTube, and you decided I'm going to enroll in this academy he's got going. So talk through like maybe the mindset of what led you to say, hey, I want to do this, and then what life was like after that.
Yeah, sure. And it's probably all come full circle, and I can probably hit a little bit of that. But at some point, YouTube started allowing people, back then it was, gosh, what was it called? Like you were an associate or something. There was another term for it, and you had to apply, and they had to watch your channel and say, okay, you're good enough that we're going to monetize your channel. Like it was purely subjective at that point. And I wanted to be one of those people. I'm like, I think I'm putting out decent content, and it would be great to get paid for my time. And there's a certain amount of, there were videos definitely that were made for friends and for interaction with friends. It was much more of a one-on-one community type of thing back then, as opposed to now. And all of that said, I was like, you know what? Some of these videos are really dark. Oh man, there's some old stuff. But some of the videos are dark, and I came from the rock and roll background, and I used to, there it is right there. I used to produce live video for rock shows and edit music video and things like that. And I'm like, I know how to do this stuff better than I'm doing it. I was just using a little point and shoot camera. So I decided, okay, I want to take this a little bit more serious. I didn't really want to make a job out of it. That wasn't my point. I just wanted to make it something, as a creative guy, something I could be proud of. And once I got the car done, my whole channel changed. And that was where Tim Schmoyer came in and looking at, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And really, I love cars. I'm really into cars, but I wanted my channel to be more about making things and designing things, because I think that's really more about who I am. The car project was just a vehicle for me to design what I thought a 74 Karmann Ghia should look like. And so I did take video labs with Tim Schmoyer, and it just helped me sort through like a self-analysis of the channel, really. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this stuff? And if you're going to put the time and effort into it, you might as well make it worth your time. So I did that, and it helped tremendously. I don't remember what my numbers were when I got on with Tim, but I know my channel growth like tripled in that year. And it was just because I was intentional about things, I guess is the way I would say it. I wanted a specific target audience. I wanted to do specific things on my channel. And later in life, my channel turned away from that again. I lost a bunch of people, maybe not as subscribers, but as people who normally viewed the channel, because I got away from car stuff and I got into musical instruments and some other things that really light my fire, turn my crank, or however you want to say it. But during Tim's class, YouTube put back together a program that they had started and then stopped called Next Up. And during Next Up, you could apply, and they would bring you out to New York for a week. And it was like a film degree through a fire hose. You met with directors of photography, people who were experts in cinematography, lighting, audio, editing, writing scripts, understanding storylines, even if it's reality. I guess what we do is reality, right? It's DIY reality shows. We don't script them, but you need to think about the story to make it interesting. Otherwise, people don't really want to watch. Now, there are channels where the story is totally nonverbal. It's all visual, and that's okay. But then there are other channels where it's a journey of a project, and that story arc might be 10 videos long, but each video in and of itself has its own story arc, and those things are very important. And so for me, it was like, well, again, if you're going to do this, you might as well do it. And that's why I did those two things, the Tim Schmoyer class and the Next Up. And it helped. One of the great things that Google did is they gave us a $2,500 gift certificate to B&H Photo for being in that class. So that bought a, gosh, it's almost embarrassing to say it, but it was a $2,000 camera lens that I love. And that's the only lens I use when I'm filming. And it bought my camera body as well. I think I kicked in a little bit of cash at the end of it, but that was a wonderful byproduct, and it allowed me to jump to that next level in terms of production, for sure.
Well, it leads me into a segment that we have later on in the show about tips and tricks, and Grant's going to get to that, but I do have a question, I'll save it for that. But you kind of nailed you talked about Tim Schmoyer and having those experts available to you, and when we have some guests on our show that have been through the YouTube success story, that's part of the reason why we have you on here, is because we want to kind of dive into what it is that kind of makes the YouTube heartbeat beat, so to speak. Give us a little bit of a glimpse into that that algorithm that I don't think any one person knows how to crack, but some of us know just a little bit enough to be dangerous. Others know it, every last little heartbeat, so to speak. So, when we talk about YouTube, you do have another channel, I believe.
I do.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about your other channel and how it relates, or how it may tie into what it is you do?
Sure. So my other channel is Skyscraper Guitars, and I alluded earlier, on my Greg's Garage channel, I built a guitar from scratch, just chunks of wood, and away we go. We're going to build a guitar. And that turned off like 90% of my audience that was into cars and welding. I mean, like, you can't get further away from that stuff than woodworking, right? Like, most metalworking guys despise wood butchers. Not all of them, working on dead tree carcasses kind of stuff, and like, never the twain meet. And I'm one of those guys that, like, if you can build it out of something, I want to mess with it, right? So I started another channel called Skyscraper Guitars, and it was very much for the same reason that I did the Greg's Garage channel. Is I grew up, we had a guy in my neighborhood who scratch built guitars. So, like, from the age of probably 10 or 11 years old, my best friend mowed this guy's grass, and I grew up playing guitar and drums and everything else. And one day my friend came up to me and he goes, Mr. Canetto, who is this guy, Mr. Canetto is building a guitar in his garage. And I'm like, you can't build a guitar in your garage. Like, those are made by magical people. Like, you can't just do that, right? And he goes, no, I'll take you down there and show you. And of course, knock on the door, and this guy answers, and there's two little kids outside. He doesn't believe that you're building the guitar. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he takes us in the garage, and he's got a drill press and a bandsaw and all those things. And he's making a freaking guitar. And, my mind is just blown that you can do this. And so from that point forward, as a little nerd guitar player in a neighborhood, anytime you can go down and bug this guy, you do, right? So he showed me in grade school how to set up guitars, how to make them play better, and how to do all these things that the normal person doesn't grow up knowing. So I grew up with all of this guitar experience and knowledge, seeing them built from scratch and all these other things. And I got out of school, worked in architecture, and actually left architecture for about 3 years to do big rock and roll shows. So I worked on huge rock and roll stages working on guys' guitars that you've definitely seen on MTV and other places. So I had a body of knowledge that it's like, most normal people don't know this. How can I share it? So I started the Skyscraper Guitars channel, and it was all, and of course I don't have one within reach here. I make these little wood blocks. Shoot, I make them by the thousands now. This is a blank for the little wood blocks, but they're for setting up a very specific kind of guitar. I made one on a YouTube video. It's on my Greg's Garage channel, and I made one thinking I'd sell 5 or 6 of them, like total. I think I made 8 of them in that video, and I thought, if I sell all 8 of these, I'll be surprised. And now I sell 10,000 of those a year. Right? So yeah, bizarre, right? But it all came from wanting to help people with guitars. So the Skyscraper Guitar channel is dedicated to guitars, dedicated to the guitar tools that I make. So now I've got a line of guitar tools that I've designed and made. Most of them are different from other manufacturers that are out there. They've got some kind of improvement or something like that. So that venture is very different in a lot of ways. It's very much a business venture from day one, but it is about helping people with guitars. That's the idea behind it.
Yeah. So
the thing I would share is I'll share one other thing. Sorry, Grant.
No, you're fine.
Is that when you look at YouTube, if we're talking about the algorithm and how to make money and all these things, right? And people always want to game the system. I think there's kind of 2 things that I'll say. Number one, make videos for people. Like, make them for people. If they're interesting, people will find them. People will find good content. Just like the butt welding video, it's been viewed 1 million and some change times, I think. I've got another one called, I'll say it the PG way, Stuff Welders Say, that's got over 2 million views on it. And it's because it's funny and people find it and they like it and they share it with their friends. And you know, you look at the thumbnail for it, there's no magic about the thumbnail, there's no magic about the title. It's just Stuff Welders Say. And that is, I think, the key to being successful on YouTube is just make content that people are going to enjoy. But the other one is success on YouTube doesn't mean AdSense numbers. I think that's where people go so wrong. If you want it to be a business, you need to have a business plan just like any other business out there. And sometimes that business plan involves t-shirts and hoodies like Grant has on. And sometimes it involves other things, some other, my camera died.
Oh.
Hang on, guys.
Baby.
Hang on. I'll get there.
Well, Greg, as you're adjusting your camera, I mean, that's essentially where my next question was going to go, is talking about, there you are, you're back. So continue on.
I apologize. I've got a very technical setup here because this camera looks terrible, but that's okay. But I was going to say, you have to wrap a business plan around your channel, whatever that means. And it's that way in life, right? If you want to make money at doing something, you got to have a plan. And for me, the Skyscraper Guitars is that example. I think I've got like 5,000 subscribers over there. It's a very small channel, but it's very focused. And I don't get on there and I'm not a salesman. I'm a terrible salesman, actually. But I get on and I share, this is how I do these things. And this is how I do it with my tools. And this is how I did it before I made my tools. So if you want to buy my tools, that's great. If you don't, you can use a deck of playing cards, or you can use popsicle sticks or 9-volt batteries or this other thing, or you can use your table saw and a piece of sandpaper to make something perfectly flat. And that's what I do to the tools I sell. It's labor intensive, but just like on your car, Jason, you can pay a body man $150 an hour to sit and weld a panel on, or you can go buy yourself a MIG welder and you can weld it on yourself. It's going to take you more time than it's going to take him. But at the end, if you're good enough about doing a good job and being a craftsman, your work is going to be every bit as good as theirs.
And you've learned something along the way.
Yes.
Yeah, and the topic's very interesting to me, and that's where I was going to go next anyway with my question. But before I kind of dive into that, Greg, I just did want to take a moment to give a little shout out to some of the people that popped in the chat. So America Bumper to Bumper, Darren's Mopar Express, Tim Manning, Flyboy 60, Grimm's Auto Service, King Eric, the greatest of all, of course, the regular around these parts. But I did want to give a special shout out to Pony 1992, who is he's a Mustang channel follow, and he has a Tuesday live stream, much like we have here. So if you guys want a place to hang out on Tuesday nights, I highly recommend Pony 1992. He has a really good following and a really good show, and he helped me pick up maybe 5 or 6 different subscribers there on Tuesday night as I forge on to 2,000 subscribers. But Greg, you talked about, so Skyscraper Garage was kind of like born out of many different things. Of course, your background in the rock and roll world, of course, your childhood story you shared with us, but also, the question before, it kind of came out of, from what I know and from the Tim Schmoyer things I've been a part of, like 30 Days to Better YouTube, he's very much directing people towards your end goal should be to sell a product. And so YouTube, really, I look at it, even though I have kind of an idea of a product that I may want to sell someday. I'm just not, I don't think timing's right to roll it out. But I look at YouTube as like, that I agree, that should be your end goal, but it's like, the YouTube right now is like your pre-marketing. You can build a marketing base right now and a following and get people to like you or whatever. But so Skyscraper Garage, like you said, or Skyscraper Guitars, I did that on my Instagram story. You looked at it and you kind of relied on your experience from your rock and roll days with the shows, and guitars always need fixed. And you thought, hey, people aren't making great tools out there to fix guitars. I think I can do it better. So talk a little bit about how, like that segue, like when did you finally take the plunge and say, hey, I'm going to start producing products? And I'll even go back to that idea of the graduating class of YouTube, and maybe talk about how Tom's Tool Room has been such a big part of making some of your ideas a reality.
Yeah, and gosh, I should grab a tool out. In fact, I just saw one of my good friends, Chad from Man Crafting, posted on his Instagram today one of the first machine projects that Tom and I did together. It was for Izzy Swan, who's another big YouTube channel in the DIY space. And Tom and I did that project together, and it was this eye-opener. Like, Tom is this incredible machinist. He grew up, he said, as soon as he could hold on to his dad's pant leg, he was operating the wheels on a mill, and it's absolutely true. And they were doing stuff for the auto manufacturers in Detroit and for aerospace and everybody else. So it wasn't like this Tinkertown workshop. It was real stuff. They, you've probably been in cars that have a part that was produced by a machine they made. In fact, I can tell you this as a fact. If you've ever ridden on a Bluebird school bus, the seats in a Bluebird school bus have springs in them. They made every spring for Bluebird school buses for several years by the semi-truckload, he said. So that was the level of work they did there. And when I realized that that Tom had that level of capability, and we did the project for Izzy Swan, it was a really cool through wrench that you could operate with a battery-powered drill. So anyway, when we did that, I was like, I have ideas for other things that we could make. What do you think? Do you think you could make these? And he had a manual mill, and he goes, oh yeah, I could plan that out and write all my notes down. And one of those things, I've got a bunch of show and tell things in case we wanted to talk about that. But one of them is a notch straight edge. Like, you can see the detail in this thing is crazy, right? All of these things are a different spacing apart. And I said, can you do this on a manual mill? He said, oh, absolutely. I can handle that, Greg. And I said, well, I think we're going to make a few of these. It'd be great if you got a CNC mill. And so he did. And I've kept him busy ever since. But like, there were other projects we did. I don't know, again, the DIY space, Jimmy DiResta is a big name that a lot of people know. Jimmy DiResta called, and he wanted an air gun that was brass knuckles, right? So this old Tony, who's another big YouTube channel, designed this for him and made a prototype, but he wanted to produce
the knuckle duster, I believe is what they call it. The
knuckle duster, yeah. And so he called Tom, and Tom called me and said, hey, can you make this real, like in the 3D modeling world? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. You think you can machine it? And he's like, well, of course I can machine it, you know. So he machined them, and we worked on this project together. But that's what led to the light bulb coming on for Skyscraper guitars. So it all started out with these little wooden blocks that I make, and then I was like, you know, I'd really like to make something out of metal. I think my first project was fret rockers, and we started making those, and the story just goes on from there. And Tom now has people that he employs part-time to come in and help machine things. And I think he's running the shop 7 days a week now. So, and we actually, I don't want to go too crazy here, but we're getting ready to ship out another collaboration. So there's another channel, and I'm not trying to sell these. We're sold out. You can't buy these. Next Level Carpentry is another fairly good sized YouTube channel. I think he's 200,000 subscribers, something like that. He called and asked if I could make this block for him. And anybody who deals with welding and tubing knows that inside of a piece of square tubing, there is a weld right here. And if you want to telescope two things, you have to use a tube that's smaller, or you have to chisel this out or something like that. Well, Matt from Next Level Carpentry called me. He said, I have an idea for how to take that weld seam out. We're going to make a burr, and it's going to be powered by a power drill. So there's an extension that goes in here. Do I have that? Yeah. A power drill extension goes in there, and you put this in your drill, and it turns the burr. And then you make a jacket to go around said burr, and you pull it through a piece of tubing. And this one has the weld ground out. You can maybe see it back there. There we go. Has it ground out, so now you can telescope tubing, and you can do it, you know, just virtual seconds. But all of those little crazy ideas have added up to like these little business things that I get into, and it's a blast to do them. I told Matt, I said, I'll make this tool whether we sell them or don't sell them. I think it's just going to be a fun project. And I've got a CNC, a Tormach CNC here in my garage. I'm pointing at it because it's behind the camera. And so I make all the prototypes, and then Tom does all the production work.
So I just want to go back right quick to the, I had to write it down so I'd remember it, the knuckle duster. Just because you never know when you're hosing down that car and some bad guy might come up behind you. I'm just saying. So we want to take this opportunity to open up the chat to any questions that you guys may have for Greg. One of the very first ones that come in was a fellow Panther Platform follower who asked if you owned a Mercury Grand Marquis. My guess is probably no, but that was the first question that came in.
I don't own any Mercuries, unfortunately. I'd love to own like probably a 4950 Merc. I think those are just sweet old cars, the big old bubbly.
So I put the call out there to questions, guys. If you got any questions for Greg, go ahead and put them in the comments, and Grant or I will be keeping an eye on that. We referenced back to earlier in the show about tips and tricks. So I guess this is where we're going to kind of ask you, maybe what's the main focus that somebody who is an experienced YouTuber with a small channel like Grant and myself, who that we could benefit from? What's one trick that you may recommend?
Sure. I don't know if I categorize this as a trick, but it's definitely something to be aware of, especially in the DIY space, is the pace of your content. So when people are watching a video, like we live in a world where people's attention spans are about a fraction of a second, right? And that forward button is there. I know for me personally, I watch all videos in 2x. So I watch them twice as fast as they were intended to be watched. And people skip ahead and they do things and they want to get to the point. So there's a certain amount of, when you talk to people about the algorithm, they'll tell you, oh, 7 minutes is the magic mark, or 12 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. And that may be true for mainstream content. And I'm talking about, you know, the guys with several million followers that are trying to, you know, buy their fifth mansion or whatever it is that they're doing. Those things are probably true. But when you're making content that is, I'll call it in some cases evergreen, right? Like if you're working on a 68 Camaro, 10 years from now, somebody's going to be looking for content on a 68 Camaro. That's evergreen content. When you're doing that, I find that I can take my videos and cut them down by half. Like I'll edit it. I'll get a rough edit together. And I think that's pretty good. And I go, okay, how much can I chop out of here? And I can usually chop out half of that. So if it's 8 minutes long, I can make it 4 minutes and it still makes sense. And I do an exercise every once in a while. I don't do it on every video, where I go, okay, can I put this whole video, every piece of valuable content, can I put it into a 15-second Instagram post? And usually the answer is yes. So when you do that, it tells you what's important about that video. And as you can see in this conversation, I have a tendency to just blab on. Like, I go on and on and on. Grant knows this. He's been on the tail end of my conversations before. But I can.
It's a
And
great way to shorten a work day.
it is. But yeah, I can definitely go on, and people don't want to watch me go on and on. They want to see what they're there for. How to weld a rocker panel into a car. Zip, 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 zip. See you next week, folks. I mean, you could literally do that, right? Like, you could make a 1-minute video on how to weld on a rocker panel. And that video, you'd probably be surprised how successful that video might be. Every once in a while on my Skyscraper channel, I do put out a full-length, gory detail. Like, if you're going to do this job and you're a professional and you want to see how every nut and bolt is done, I put it out there. It might be 20, 25 minutes long. And then I'll edit a 3-minute version of that same video and put it up and call it the express version. And people love it because they might watch the full version the first time. And then if they have to go back and reference it, they can watch that 3-minute one and get everything they need, all those little reminders. But that evergreen content, which I think is, hot rodding and cars are very much, and guitars are the same way, right? Like, the 62 Stratocaster is going to be something that people search for the rest of their lives. And so when you apply that heavy editing to your content, I think it always comes out better on the other side. That said, I still have long videos.
No, it's a struggle for sure, because there's two ways to approach that. Well, one, when you're the consumer, right? You're in the garage and you may only have a Saturday to work on something. I don't care about all the extra fluff and all the extra explanation. Like, just tell me like how to get this brake caliper unstuck or whatever. Like what is the crux? So that resonates very true in our hemisphere, or whatever you want to call our little world that we live in. The other part about it is I remember, sometimes I just challenge myself. It's like, okay, I'm talkative too, because I just want to tell people like how we arrived here, how we got to this point, and then it's like it's really easy to talk for even 90 seconds about any one thing. And if I stopped 5 times to explain what that is, so what's that? That's a 7.5-minute video before you even put it in the fun stuff. So, my analytics tell me like a 6 to 12-minute video is kind of the sweet spot to what you were kind of talking about before. And it's like, well, I'm already at 7.5 just because I blabbed on for forever. So a time or two, I've just forced myself, like, I'm just going to shoot this video without talking. I'm going to force myself to not talk at all. And I have a video right now that it's my how to rebuild a carburetor in 3 minutes. And yeah, it's not true. It takes longer than 3 minutes, but the video is condensed down to 3 minutes because I just didn't talk and just clipped, 2 seconds and put 2 seconds after 2 seconds after 2 seconds. And wouldn't you know, it's really starting to pick up some steam right now. So that's very much, that all makes sense to us. And I think the way you explained it, that edit it once, then ask yourself, can I do more? And I think we would all benefit from that. So I think that's really awesome advice. But
well,
Jason,
just to kind of on top of that too, that theory works if, like you said, if you've built yourself a business model and you know exactly what you're going after and the audience that you're looking to attract. Someone like myself, I find that some of my videos are how to and I show how I've done certain things, but it all flows into the storyline that started almost 3 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, where it's my whole channel is a story. It's almost a vlog that sometimes your 12-minute video or your 7 to 12-minute video, whatever it is just a lot of talking and chit chat, and you may only have 2 or 3 seconds or 2 or 3 minutes of how to. One of the great things that I like that YouTube has been able to present to creators is the chapter feature, so that you can rate in the comments. You can say, okay, if you don't want to listen to my fluff and BS, you can go right to 2 minutes and 35 seconds, and this is where we get down to the meat and potatoes. So that's it's great. And I guess for someone like myself who just wishes to continue to be a story about how I do things, I do have some what you classified as evergreen content, and it proves it because I've got some videos that are in there that just keep growing and growing and growing, and some that are just stalemated. So I'm looking into the chat. I don't really see any questions coming up out of the chat, but we're coming up on time to call it quits for the evening. But this is where I guess we ask each other something that's coming up on our YouTube channel or a special project that may be happening. Greg, do you have something that's coming up on either of your channels that you might want to kind of give us a little bit of teaser with?
Oh man, you would think I'd have a great answer for that in a whole like laundry list of things. Quite honestly, our focus recently has been on catching everything up. But I do have on my guitar channel, I do some setups for people here locally in Colorado. And so I've got a couple guitars that I set up for a customer of mine. And I'll be featuring I think it's a 1982 ESP Japanese made Stratocaster copy I think it was one of their lawsuit guitars. So it's got some really cool backstory to it. And then another one is, it was an LTD guitar that was, I think it's the design of the lead guitar player for Slayer, I want to say. So they're just kind of cool guitars, but those are coming up on Skyscraper Guitars at some point, along with some longer format stuff. But on Greg's Garage, I'm looking around right now. I just bought a laser cutter. I think I've had it in my shop for a week now. So I'm going to be doing some laser cutting stuff, prototype work, and just kind of sharing general thoughts about how I've used laser cutters in the past and how I'm going to use this one in my garage.
Yeah, and I know a lot of your latest content on Greg's Garage is more carpentry based. So if you guys want like a really kick-ass guitar storage unit and know how to build one, I would recommend kind of divert you over to Greg's Garage. So for my channel, I'm still on the the pattern of there's really no point in me putting a video up of me not starting the Fairmont. So, but I do have someone coming over. I had recently bought a Holley 350 CFM 2-barrel carb to maybe replace the Autolite one that I rebuilt in case that's the issue. But it's kind of a good investment because I can basically resell that carb for what I paid for easily because the dirt track guys are always after those. So it's just kind of extra inventory. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, you do see an upload next Wednesday of the Fairmont starting, but I won't make any promises at this point, Jason.
Well, as you guys know, the new Mercury Grand Marquis that has entered the channel has a name. I announced that on Instagram today, and it is Blackjack. So we do have a video coming up on that where I'm just basically doing some service work and teaching you guys how to get that spongy feeling out of your brakes, and it doesn't just apply to Grand Marquis or Crown Vics. It's basically any car. So it's something that's going to come out tomorrow night. You guys are going to want to tune into that. Other than that, we do have our season finale coming up on the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show next week. We are very happy to announce that Derek from Vice Grip Garage has agreed to be a part of the CarrGuy and SIXFAN show for our season finale. We're looking forward to that. Having said all that, Greg, thank you so much for taking some time out of your week and joining us here on the show. And it's been a pleasure. Learned lots. I went back and I watched that video of the guitar case. Thought that was pretty interesting. Although I'm not a carpenter nor a guitar player, I thought that was a pretty neat looking rig, especially when you inlaid the two different types of wood to get your logo in there. That was pretty cool. So thanks for being a part of the show. I'm going to hand it over to Greg, or to Greg, not to Greg. Hand it over to Grant to close us out.
Yeah, thanks again, Greg, for coming on. I know if we want to dedicate the show to crazy rock and roll stories or the people who've reached out to you to buy your tools since you started Skyscraper Guitars, I mean, I'm sure we could fill close to an hour, maybe hour and a half show. So I guess I say all that to say that, remember, guys, when you're doing your side hustle here on YouTube, don't think single-minded about the AdSense direction, because there's plenty of money to be made when you decide to just produce a product. So much so that I know, Greg, I'm not gonna I don't know your books anyway, but I'm not gonna open it up. But I'll just say that Greg's been successful enough to employ his own wife, basically full time, and make an income off of Skyscraper guitar tool production, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of like the other side gigs you were talking about, like the inner tube weld removable thing, as well as like Guru tools and their speed squares and things like that. So just I guess that's where I'll leave it. Greg, I'll let you give us some parting thoughts or tidbits, but it's been really impressive to watch you grow ever since I first met you in 2013.
Well, it's a wild ride. I guess I'd kind of leave it at this. I didn't know where it was all going to wind up when I started, and I still don't know where it's all going to go now that I'm in the middle of the ride. But I kind of have one big rule. It's that anything that I'm going to do, number one, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability and make it the best thing that it can be. When I look at my guitar tools, they stand up against companies that have been around for 60 years making stuff. And our stuff is, we're the new kids on the block, but we're every bit as good as they are. So, don't ever stop short. But then it's always fun. That's the other thing that I make sure of, whether it's working on my car or somebody else's car, or doing this little tool for my buddy Matt. It's like, yeah, dude, that sounds like a ton of fun. Let's do it. And it's amazing when you set out to solve a headache that probably everybody has. You have fun doing it, and at the end of the day, everybody's like, well, I need one of those. and it's amazing where that journey will take you. So just don't ever be afraid of anything or back off, because that journey is a pretty fun one.
All right, so having said that, guys, we are going to close out the show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week on Grant's channel over on Straight Six Fan for the season finale of Season 4. Thanks, guys. We will see you next week.